last year the food production in India was about 264 million tons. Our projections, even the National Commission and some of the recent exercises have shown that in the context of 2050, we might require something like 400 to 420 million tons of food grain. Again, I would reassert that it is not just the food grain.
If we look at the situation today and project it to 2050, if we are today at about 24 liters per capita per day, we would be at 13 liters per capita per day. That means that we would be below the minimum, both Indian and international standards of liter per capita per day in 2050 on the projections of climate change parameters, temperature, runoff, precipitation, and precipitation changes, but as well as changes in the population in that area. In other words, we are no longer in a paradigm of too much or abundant or free. Less energy per capita, less land per farmer, less water per capita per day, and that's the paradigm within which we would like to have more food, cheaper food, and better food.
That most of us have enough to eat. And we have decent lives, we have a car, all these things. But there are large numbers of people in this country who cannot even eke out a decent meal. And if your ecological footprint is 2, let me tell you, you don't have much time to go.
Most of the farmers' expenditure is going into capital buying. Latest agriculture census gives us that 90% of agricultural operations are done by machine, mechanically. Our tractors, our tubers, they can be used for 4 or 5 times of output. But every 1 acre a farmer is having a tuber, which is not required. Now we are having 1 out of 6 farmers with very small land holding who are having tubers now. The need of sugarcane in Vidarbha, which is already very much water scarce. And we have shifted the farmers from cotton to sugarcane in the village.
In human, we are somehow logically using the resources without even testing it. I'm saying that on a very robust data by Government of India, which is testing the deep aquifers, and they are instigating the irrigation from deep aquifer. But when I went to Vaishali for a field study, I found that because of this boom that called shallow groundwater, most of the people are relying on hand pumps and new wells which are just dug at 30 feet or 60 feet level, and they never tested.
The kind of food you buy in a supermarket, including the cost of transport, refrigeration, including packaging, actually has 500 calories for every, has used 500 calories for every 1 calorie of food that you get out.
In India, truth be told, food security, and for that matter, almost other forms of security, social security, civic security, and many others, reside in the hands of the section of society which gets the least consideration, understanding, support of knowledge, technology, finance, and intermediation. That's, of course, the farmers. Less energy per capita, less land per farmer, less water per capita per day, and that's the paradigm within which we would like to have more food, cheaper food, and better food.
Confronting the large numbers of resource constraints, which are doubled and quadrupled because they are not single constraints. They are causing each other constraints. They are all basically very complex systems. And not only is the topsoil competing for use in housing and food production, but also in terms of ecological balance and a lot of resources and people are now on a collision course. And it is possible for us to change it, but only perhaps just. And we got to do it now.
We have to, first of all, change our agricultural practices. Irrigation technology, a lot of new technologies are there. Less water intensive crops, which may affect even the trade pattern, international trade pattern. We have to examine what we are trading, what we are importing or exporting. I think a commodity like rice may not be something that we keep on exporting because it is water intensive. We are exporting water. Cropping system has to change. A commodity like sugar, your area, is not feasible in the long run. Maybe we should think about the trade pattern. It's a very heavy water intensive crop and is largely produced in areas which are water scarce.
What if we could treat the sludge coming out of wastewater treatment plants? If we could focus that sludge into after post treatment as a manure for the agricultural end.
But the tribute to the Indian farmer or Indian scientists or technology, I think India has done fairly tremendously good. I think first we need to acknowledge whatever way we may look at it, the food security issue has been primarily addressed by the Indian small farmer and with the help of the scientists. And I have no reason to believe that there will be a food crisis in India. I'm absolutely sure about that. But there will be a crisis of the farmer who produces the food seems to be in a crisis. So he seems to be killing the farmer. So whether by killing the farmer, whether we will be able to attain the food security, that is the question which we need to probably answer.
The real issue today is not whether there is technology to grow enough food. I think the real issue is whether the finances will keep farmers farming. Farming is a very risky business, and instead of making it less risky and more sensible and financially more coherent, farmers are pushed to bankruptcy and to situations of both financial and human humiliation which they can't cope with. The vast majority of farmers are poor and do not benefit from most of the subsidization and are in fact in a regime of indentured labor and tied to debt to the moneylender. And what is happening with agricultural subsidization and agricultural insurance in this country, I could speak the whole evening about just the first part of it. It is absolutely right, ready, and necessary for enormous revolution. Risk management is the key, and you do not do risk management only on political calculations of votes. You do it through a dismantlement of a system in which the debt and the owner of debt controls the entire financial system. You do it through a true popularization of the access to money, and that requires consensus at community level. That requires that there will be a lot more utilization of community resources which are considered to be dust, dirt, useless.
What if we go for urban development, not in the traditional sense which have been going on, but focusing on what some European countries did, make urban development distributed in the farmland nearby the big cities and connect all these areas with a better transportation and infrastructure system so that the air quality is better, the water quality is better, recycling of water is more available to agricultural resources, and the distribution cost also are dropped.
We have to deliberately tilt our policy and implementation to marginal farmers, small farmers and tenant farmers. Purely tenant farmers
the policy interventions or the policy solutions to the three problems which you mentioned, energy, food, water, would come through the way we combat climate change?
Our policies, although they didn't say in those words, are actually in conflict with each other. There's incoherence. There isn't adequate coherence between our policies for water, for sanitation, for trade. You name it, each one of them is actually countervailing.
Poor people, we need affordable food. But that affordability has to be provided with direct subsidy rather than subsidizing the inputs like electricity and water. Subsidizing the inputs means wastage, tremendous wastage of scarce resources and misallocation of resources in what to produce and what not to produce. Optimal decision cannot be taken if the inputs do not have the correct pricing. Pricing is according to scarcity. Alternative employment has to be provided, and that is also a solution to agriculture. So, solution for agriculture lies also in non-agricultural sector. That is one point.
It's still possible to save us, we think. There's no guarantee to it, but we certainly want to work towards finding ways in which we can turn this ship, this tanker, around in time before we've gone over. Of course we can save ourselves if we bring our resource base into a level of health which can support us, and we reduce the number of people that we keep producing, both of which are possible.